You wouldn't think it now, but this used to be Weston's most glamorous attraction. I must have been 4 years old when I first came here, and then it seemed like a gateway to a magical world. And even today, in its dilapidated state, I'd still get a sense of the same wonder that I felt then.
I don't know what's going to happen to Birnbeck, but its future looks pretty bleak. I'd buy it if I had enough money and live on the island. I don't know what it is about the place. It's in my heart, I suppose.
Sadly, not much has changed since then. Following its closure, Birnbeck Pier has only become more and more derelict, now to the point where the island will soon be having its final visitors. This begs the question, is the old pier as relevant to the town of Weston-super-Mare as it once was, and can that magic of the once thriving seaside attraction ever hope to be recaptured? This is the Birnbeck Debate. First opening in 1867, Birnbeck Pier was one of Weston-super-Mare's defining landmarks in its heyday, attracting tourists from all over the country to come visit the historic pleasure pier.
It is the only pier which links the mainland to an island, the only one in England. It's a Grade 2 star listed building. It's hugely important in the history of piers, if you happen to think that's important, and I do. It's one of 14 or so piers designed by Eugenius Birch, who was the doyen of pier structures in England. He was the most famous. He's as famous for piers as Brunel is for steamships and railways. So it is hugely significant. It's hugely important. It also, of course, has associations with other things, such as the war, the last war, the Second World War. This is where Barnes Wallis came with the Wheezers and Dodgers from Oxford and Cambridge, the Ministry of Miscellaneous Weapons Development, to test out the bouncing bomb. So it's full of history.
However, this masterfully crafted structure would unfortunately not last forever. Despite several instances of damage to the pier throughout its history, Birnbeck's fate was sealed after it was heavily damaged during storms in 1990. Birnbeck's decline in popularity meant that there was not enough funding to repair it, leading to its subsequent closing in 1994. Since then, the pier has been unable to be experienced by the general public, denying future generations the ability to walk along its boardwalk and experience Birnbeck. All hope is not lost, however, as there are people still fighting to make sure that Birnbeck Pier stands proud once again. The Birnbeck Regeneration Trust are a fundraising group based in Weston dedicated to the revival of Birnbeck Pier. Invited by the Trust's project director, Richard Griffin, we attended the opening of a new coastal road at Pier View, among the Mayor of Weston, as well as many people passionate about Birnbeck. We spoke to Peter Lander, archivist for the Birnbeck Regeneration Trust, to hear what he had to say.
I think it's very, very important to Weston's history. It was bringing a lot of revenue into the town, a major transport link coming over from not only Wales, you see Cardiff, but also North Devon and counties up the estuary. I think it's very, very important. We spend a lot of time here interviewing people, meeting people, gathering stories. It's part of Weston's history. It's part of the pier complex that's around the country. It's the most important pier to us. We talk about it being a pier. Technically, it's a bridge. It's a unique feature of the British coastline.
The Regeneration Trust clearly has a great respect for Birnbeck Pier and continues to raise money for its future. While their exact plans are not yet ready for public release, due to be announced in 2019, Mr. Lander was able to give us a general idea about the potential road ahead for Birnbeck.
It wants turning into a for our benefit into a community project where we can restore it to its Victorian origins and give the people, the tourists, not only the people of Weston, but the tourists, the visitors here, the Victorian experience that it would have.
Unfortunately, these plans are not yet able to go through. In 2014, the Birnbeck Pier site was purchased by C&M Estates, and there has been no progress on development since. We attempted to reach out to C&M and their project manager for Birnbeck, but they were both unavailable for comment. John Crockford Hawley, former mayor of Weston-super-Mare, local councillor, expert of Old Weston, and author of Weston-super-Mare, A History and Celebration, met with us to talk about the past and future of the pier.
So, it would be interesting to know what people really think they could do with the pier once it has been restored.
I spoke to Richard Griffin a few weeks ago, and he said that there seems to be a clear plan that they have in place for Birnbeck. Whether or not they'll, I think one of the administrators who sort of found my emails with Richard and spoke to me on Saturday wasn't too keen on having that broadcast or having that made public yet. I think they're planning something for that midway through next year, but they seem to have a clear plan.
They won't get any grant aid unless they go public.
That's why,
because that's not the way grant aiding bodies work.
I think that's sort of part of the reason they were so keen to work on us with this documentary, because part of
and of course the biggest problem is the fact they don't own the pier.
Well, yeah, that sort of has a bit of a factor, and they can't do anything with it. C&M Estates have still got their hands on it. How relevant do you feel Birnbeck Pier is to Weston's history?
Utterly irrelevant. I say that glibly. The pier currently has no purpose whatsoever. It's not a place where steamers land, it's not a place where people go for leisure or pleasure. It exists simply because it's part of Weston's history. And that, I think, is the problem. We really have to decide what future it has as a structure. Why do we want it to carry on in existence?
What would you say is the best thing that could be done with the pier site?
The best thing, I mean, if we want to keep the pier as an historic part of Weston, then pump money into it. There's nothing that money wouldn't solve. If there was a spare £14 million floating around, the pier could be fully restored, it would look wonderful, but what would you do with it? What purpose would it serve once it's restored? And that, I think, is the big question. We need to try to understand why we want to preserve the pier, what use it would have for future generations. I'm an historian, I'm a romantic, so yes, I would love to see it restored. But as I said earlier, it needs a purpose. It won't succeed if it's simply restored for people to go along and wander along the pier and do nothing else and wander home again.
Do you have any particular fond memories of Birnbeck that you would like to talk about?
Yes. The whole thing of going on the ships. I remember on one occasion when my parents took my sister and me to Bristol shopping. And of course, when you go from Weston to Bristol, you jump in your car or you get on the train or the bus. But no, we went by ship. We took the ship, paddle steamer Glenusk. We took her from Birnbeck Pier, called in a Clevedon Pier, went up to Portishead, turned into the river Avon at Avonmouth, went up the river under the suspension bridge to Hotwell's landing stage, got off the ship there and went shopping in Bristol. Had to catch a bus home because the tide had gone out. And, it's the way it operates in this area. So, but I mean, when I talk to anyone who's younger than I am about going from Weston to Bristol by ship, that's something which will never ever happen again. So yeah, it's. I'm not a fisherman, but lots of fishermen used to go on the pier and sling their nets over or the line over and catch fish. The lifeboat no longer operates from the pier, and as kids we could hear the maroons go up. You know, everything nowadays is by bleeper, so nobody actually knows. I'm an historian, I'm a romantic, so yes, I would love to see it restored. But as I said earlier, it needs a purpose. It won't succeed if it's simply restored for people to go along and wander along the pier and do nothing else and wander home again.